Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're talking about a very special sugar, one that was literally designed not to be used by the body. It's this incredible story of how scientists took what we know about digestion and flipped it on its head to create a powerful medical tool.
So, before we get to our star molecule, let's start with this quote. It's kind of like hearing from the carbohydrates themselves, and it really gets to the heart of what they do. They're both the fuel that runs the show and the building materials for life itself.
Okay, so what does all that poetic scientific language actually mean? Well, at their core, carbohydrates are just organic molecules built from three simple things: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That big technical term you see, that's just a fancy way of describing their specific chemical shape. At the end of the day, we're talking about the sugars and starches that are just fundamental to, well, everything.
Right. So, to really appreciate how our designer sugar works its magic, we first need to understand this universal code. Why are carbohydrates so incredibly important in the first place?
I mean, their resume is just huge. They are our body's absolute go-to for quick energy, but they're also the starting blocks for building other essential molecules like fats and amino acids. They're literally woven into the fabric of our cell membranes, they give plants their backbone, and they even act as our body's own little power pack in the form of glycogen.
So how are all these complex structures actually made? Well, it all starts with the simplest units of this carbohydrate code, the absolute fundamental building blocks. And these foundations are called monosaccharides. I love this analogy. Think of them as individual Lego blocks. They're the basic, simple sugars that you just can't break down any further. They're the absolute smallest piece.
And here are the all-stars, the ones you've definitely heard of. You've got glucose, which is our cell's main fuel source. There's fructose, the sugar that makes fruit so sweet, galactose from milk, and even ribose, which is a critical piece of our genetic material and energy currency.
So, what happens when you take two of these monosaccharide blocks and snap them together? Well, you use a special chemical link called a glycosidic bond, and boom, you get something new, a disaccharide. It's like taking two Lego blocks and clicking them together to make a new, bigger piece.
And this is a perfect example of how that works. You link a glucose and a galactose together, and you get lactose, the sugar in milk. But swap out that galactose for a fructose, and you get something totally different, sucrose. You know it as plain old table sugar. Which brings us to a very special man-made disaccharide. This is a sugar that was created specifically to break the rules of digestion, to turn a normal biological process completely on its head for a medical reason.
So let's just chew on this question for a second. Every single sugar we've talked about so far is meant to be broken down to be used for energy. But what if you designed one with the exact opposite goal? What could you possibly do with a sugar your body just ignores?
Well, meet lactulose. It's made by linking two familiar blocks, galactose and fructose. But the key here is how they're linked. That specific chemical bond is something our digestive enzymes just can't get a grip on. Think of it like a lock and key. Our bodies just don't have the right key to unlock this particular sugar. So this slide really shows the two different paths. A normal sugar, like sucrose, gets broken down and absorbed for energy almost immediately in the small intestine. But lactulose? Nope. It just keeps on trucking, passing through the small intestine completely untouched, and makes it all the way down to the colon, totally intact.
So you're probably asking, why on earth would we want a sugar our body can't even use? Well, it turns out that this supposed flaw, this indigestibility, is exactly what makes it such a brilliant medical tool. Its biggest weakness is actually its superpower.
So first up, its most straightforward use. Because it can't be absorbed, it's a super effective osmotic laxative. It doesn't get used for energy. Instead, it uses a simple principle of physics to solve a really common problem.
Here's how it works. Since all those lactulose molecules are just hanging out in the colon, they act like little sponges. Through a process called osmosis, they pull water from the body, right into the colon. All that extra water softens things up, makes it easier to pass, and gives you a really gentle and effective solution for chronic constipation. But honestly, its most critical and frankly life-saving job is in treating a really serious complication of liver failure called hepatic encephalopathy. This is a condition where toxins build up in the blood and can cause very serious brain problems.
Okay, this mechanism is just genius. So when the liver's failing, a toxin called ammonia builds up in the blood. When that undigested lactulose gets to the colon, the gut bacteria there have a feast.
They ferment it, which produces acids and lowers the pH of the colon. And here's the magic trick. That acidic environment chemically changes the toxic ammonia into a different form, ammonium, which can't be absorbed back into the blood. The toxin gets trapped and is then safely flushed out of the body. So clever.
This comparison really just lays it all out. They might look similar on paper, but their purpose couldn't be more different. Lactose is a nutritional sugar, broken down in the small intestine for food. Lactulose is a medical drug that does all its work, undigested, way down in the colon. They're basically biochemical opposites.
Now, of course, a drug that works by getting fermented by gut bacteria, well, it's going to have some predictable side effects. All that bacterial activity produces gas, which can definitely lead to bloating, cramps, and flatulence. But there are a couple of other things to watch out for, too. Some preparations have other sugars in them, so you have to be careful with diabetics. And because it's derived from milk sugar, it's a no-go for patients on a galactose-restricted diet.
So, if you only remember one thing from all this, let it be this simple little phrase. Lactulose equals laxative plus lowers ammonia. It perfectly sums up its two main life-changing jobs, which all come from its unique, indigestible design.
All right, let's do a quick lightning round just to make sure it all clicked. Why is it good for liver disease? It traps ammonia. Why does it work as a laxative? It pulls in water. And why the gas? Well, that's just the sound of your gut bacteria hard at work.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty amazing thought. Lactulose is such a brilliant example of how we can tweak simple biochemistry to get a powerful result. It just makes you wonder, what other secrets are still hidden in that carbohydrate code? And what other incredible medical tools might we be able to design in the future?